And just try to tell the audience a little bit on what went right. What did you do right, correctly, that made that game find an audience and have a market and sell well? Who wants to go first?
I can start. So one good thing I can tell about our games is that actually every single game we developed or published is profitable. You know, so some games are like super profitable, like Frostpunk or This War of Mine or Moonlighter. The other like less profitable, but then again, like we haven't lost like any single project. And the reason for that is that we are very picky, and that's something that quite often people they tell us. Okay, so we're like bitching about everything about this game, right? But that's we prefer we choose quality over quantity. So that's why our publishing program is like a couple of years old, and we published like 6 or 7 games so far, so not much. When it comes to case study, for me, the biggest challenge for us was This War of Mine, because that was like we've made some games before that, but usually that was the game. We always will split our history like in before This War of Mine, after This War of Mine. And This War of Mine was challenging because it's a very hard game when it comes to marketing, and it's a very hard game when it comes to, even to talk about with people, because it's a game of entertainment. So we decided we want to take that leap. And let's make a game that might be commercial failure, but it will be somehow pleasing ourselves when it comes to like the aesthetics and the design, what the game making is all about for us. So it went really well, but there were a lot of hard stuff. And for me, I remember before the release, with a game like this, until the day of the release, you never know if actually gonna succeed, because right with Frostpunk, right now it's easier. We have some estimations like wish lists and stuff like that you can actually get some idea how the game is gonna make, and you make some previews, etc. We have money right now to travel and show the game to the people and actually learn about their opinion about the game. So that wasn't present there in This War of Mine, and it went well. For me, in the end, This War of Mine for me is a proof that actually, if you make a game that's a good game, that's always. No matter what game you do, if you want to be successful, it has to be a good game. But the other things like if you do a game that you love and that if it's a good game for the people, the money will follow. That's our lesson from the thing. We talked with some publishers of This War of Mine, and many of them said that won't work because people want to play for pleasure, entertainment, and that game is not there. And we decided to make that bet, and 5 years later we are here, being 110 people company, having multiple titles, and sometimes it's worth to take the risk. So that's the lesson I'll tell you.
So for us, I'll talk about Dandara a little bit, because that game has like a real special place in my heart. I think a lot of the games that we publish, there's usually some kind of fun anecdote or something like that about the people that are approaching us about these, but Dandara was unique in the sense that it was the first game that we ever signed that we just got a cold email about, which is not too common, which is great. This is why Big is a fantastic show, because you get to put faces and names and stuff like that. And build relationships and whatnot. But when it came to Dandara, we just saw this really special project. It was pitched to us as a mobile-only game. Now, at this time, we're like a really young publisher, and mobile-only, that's not really like our thing. So we were a little hesitant. But once we started playing the demo, a couple of us had long flights, and we just put it on our phones. And as we were going through the flight, we just played the demo like 3 or 4 times because we really enjoyed it. And there was something just super special about it, right? But it's a Metroidvania, which is a tough genre in general to crack. There's a bajillion of those, I think. And personally, I love Metroidvanias. I grew up on these. But as a market, they're a little bit of a harder sell. Like, you can name some of the popular ones that have come out this year and last year, but there's probably like 20 other ones that came out that you'll never hear of, and that's a real bummer. But with Dandara, we're taking a look at this mobile-only game, and we're like, no, this could be so much more. And so we started talking with these devs. So we haven't even signed anything yet. We're like, what do you think about a PC release? What do you think about a console release? And so for us, like, Dandara is special because, and it was successful because the team was really flexible and they were really open. They took our feedback for what we saw in their game, and they went back to the drawing board, and they started figuring out like how they could put it onto different platforms outside of mobile, even though the game is designed with mobile in mind, which is awesome because that's how it got its uniqueness for being a Metroidvania. It's not a Metroidvania where you run left and right. It's like you're zipping all over the place, and the monotony of going back and forth isn't really there the way it is in other Metroidvanias. So when it came time to market the game, because it's a Metroidvania, because we were able to put it onto console at the same time, we were able to get a lot of attention from media because, Metroidvanias kind of grew up on console. So we combined that with a lot of PR efforts, not just in the northern hemisphere, but down here in Brazil as well. We hired some folks to help us out here to get the word out in Brazil, because there's a huge population of folks here that enjoy these kinds of games, and there's a lot of cool patriotism and stuff. And then we did some really unique things with the main character herself. You don't see a lot of women of color as the main protagonist in the game, so we wanted to push that message forward, but also we didn't want to do it in a way that seemed like, hey, look, there's a woman of color here, you should play it. It's not like that, because that's not cool. But we wanted people to still recognize this. So we did like an Instagram campaign, for example, where we hired women of color to cosplay as Dandara, and we called it like We Are Dandara campaign. And it was incredible to have all these folks like dressed up as Dandara and showing off their amazing natural curly hair, and it was cool. We got a lot of folks that really appreciated that. So anyways, yeah, those are some of the things that we did. Really love that game.
Thank you.
From my side, I kind of talked about this before publicly, but the one that I always come back to that's special to me is we did this super small, silly game called Oh Sir, the Insult Simulator, which is to this day the dumbest thing I've ever been a part of professionally, and I'm so proud of that. I wear that as a badge of honor. So we're working with this team. Some of those guys are actually guys that work on this War Mine, and we were working on another project with them that was the game like 10 times bigger, and they did this demo for Game Jam called Oh Sir. That's basically like a fighting game, but instead of hitting each other, you create insults and throw insults. It is so silly. And so they came to us and like, we made this game in Game Jam. Do you guys mind helping us getting it on Steam? I was like, sure, that's 20 minutes of my time. I don't care, sure. And we did it on Steam. We saw this game get like over 100,000 downloads with us just kind of tweeting about it. And we're like, oh, there's something there. And whilst we were working on this much bigger game, we started talking. It was like, we should just make a real version of this game. And it kind of brought it to my team, and some people loved it, and some people were like, that makes no sense. Why would you do that? So we basically went back and were like, okay, give us $40,000 and leave us alone. And that's nothing. Like, that's peanuts. So our marketing budget was $10,000, which is laughable. The reason why I focus on this game is because we have other games that I think we did really well marketing-wise, but the reality is we also have money. It's easy to market a game. We have $200,000 to $300,000 to market a game. It's way harder when we have 10,000. So what we did was we looked at a game and felt, okay, we need to be as surgical as humanly possible. We can't waste a dollar because we literally have very few of them. And whilst we were working on this much bigger game, so we sat down and we're like, who is this for? And I'm going to come back to that strategy later, but that's a strategy that I think is super important and we should always do, is break everything down to the bare essentials. Who is this for? Why am I making this? Who's going to like it? So we realized that press is not going to care because they think it's stupid, which it is. And why would we waste money in PR doing that, right? So we knew that streamers are going to love it because it's fun and they get to yell and make jokes, and who doesn't like that? And we knew that the players, younger players, are going to love it. So we basically put all of our money into creating one silly demo and one silly trailer, and we created insultograms where we paid the video actors to insult streamers the way they do in the game, and we just send them all to them directly. It cost literally like $500, and we ended up getting like, I think last count was like 7 million views between YouTube and Twitch, and that game went on to do like 800,000 downloads on nothing, like literally $10,000, but it's still one of my favorite experiences because that was an experience that everyone thought you were crazy, and you are, and you're just able to make it work with nothing, but because you understand like why you're doing what it is you're doing and who you're doing it for. Like if you can do that, you can make it work with very little resources, and when you can't, then having money is nice.
Vernon, on what you just said about asking yourself, who is this game for? It's a question that every developer asks themselves now and then. But sometimes when you get into a longer project, like a bigger project, it's kind of easy to lose track of that, of who that game is for when you're like swamped with development. So how often do you think that the developers should ask themselves that very question, who is this game for? And in your companies, all of you, how often do you do that and make decisions because of the answer to that?
So from my side, I think you should ask yourself that before you code one line of code. Like if you don't know who your game is for, and importantly, like why are you making it? Because if your answer is I'm making it because I can, that's not a particularly great answer. Especially because the marketplace is so difficult right now. It's super challenging and competitive. Like we ask ourselves that before we sign anything. We ask ourselves that before our developers start making something for us. And as a marketer, I ask myself that literally constantly. Like before I make a trailer, before I make the key art, before I spend $1 on an event. Like who is this for? Why is it being made? Why is this interesting? I believe that definitely every game has a market, but it's up to both the developer, to be blunt, and obviously, especially the marketer, which in my case is me, to understand that question and to have an answer for you. Because if you start asking that after you spend a lot of money and you're a year into development and then you realize like, wait, why are we doing this again? And who is this for? You're in trouble. Like, you're gonna need a lot of help to get out of it.
Yeah, so back in my Paradox Interactive days, we worked with a studio called Arrowhead Studios, and they made a game called Magica. They also did Helldivers later, after they went fully independent. And the CEO there had a saying. He said, a game for everyone is a game for no one. And I've always remembered that because it's really true. Like, you shouldn't be afraid to like dive into your game with like a very specific audience in mind. In fact, it's very much encouraged, because if you try to make a game that's too broad, then you might not find a foothold with an audience, any audience, right? Which is going to be a real bit of trouble, especially for those of us who have to actually talk about your game and market your game and go to events and whatnot. So don't be afraid to specialize a little bit, and definitely try to think about that before you get really far into your projects. If you're making games just because you want to make a game, like for yourself, that's fine. I'm assuming you're sitting here because you want to make games your business, right? You want to survive off of games. Well, then think about it like a business a little bit, and think about who it is that you're targeting and how you can best reach them through your game, and then maybe with a partner or something.
Yeah, one thing I can add here is that, quite often, especially younger and less experienced developers, they're afraid to pull out the plug and kill their babies, and that you have to learn that that's an important part of this business. That if you, like David said, if you want to make games as artistic expression, that's okay. If you want to make games for your mother, that's okay. But if you think about games as your job one day, about a thing that will actually allow you to make some income and to build a house or whatever, that the games has to be bought by someone. And you can make a really good game about cosmic theme, about people dressed like cats fighting zombies, and there might be some audience, but the more variety out there, like the smaller your audience becomes, and at some point the audience will be just too small for you to actually make a profit there. And even if the game is like love the baby and you think it's the best out there, sometimes you just have to let it go. That if you love something, you let it go. That's how it goes. Because in the end, market is competitive. There are like thousands of games being released every year, and you have to have something pretty special. Like a game that is not good enough today, actually like 10 years ago could be super profitable. It could sell like a couple of million copies, because like 10 years ago it was much easier. So if you don't know what your game is for who, and if you're not certain that the game is actually there's the people out there that will be willing to pay $10, $20, $30 for a game, then maybe it's time to think about other game, And I always try to stress that, because I'm traveling quite a lot through events like this, and I guess you guys will agree with me that that there's a lot of games that are good, but they're not good enough for the competitive market and for the business wise. So sometimes just put this idea in the closet. Maybe one day you will have 5 different games that make enough money for you, so you can actually bring back this idea to life and make it just for yourself. But if you want to make business, you have to think like a businessman.
Nice. Carol, you mentioned by pulling the plug off a game, which is something very important for every company. Like every successful company pulled the plug in many projects. How do you guys measure, or do you have any techniques on how do you try to figure the return on investment, like the prediction of the return on investment that you can have with the game, so that you can decide if it's okay, let's go for it, or let's just pull the plug on this one? How do you guys do that?
And so in our case, most of the games that we kill in the process, they never see the daylight. Like no one outside the studio will ever know about them. I'm like, we have. I mean, the games from Levando Studios are not all the games we ever made. Because some of them, they're buried deep. No one will find the bodies ever. But so mostly it's like our internal. When we may have an idea for a new game, it's being heavily evaluated on the prototype stage of the games we are working on. I mean, when you think about making games, you really think so I start Unity, I start Unreal, and I start writing codes. So actually, the way we develop our games, it's always in a piece of paper. Like all of our games that we have, they always start as a piece of paper. We make kind of like a board game out of them, and you start playing that. And if we finally get to the stage that those so-called board games are good enough, then we try to turn that prototype into actual game that being played on a computer. And if the prototype is good enough, then we move to pre-production, etc. So actually, every transition from one state to another is a moment that you should pull out the plug if you think that that's not good enough. If we are not able to make a game that's good enough on paper, then we don't waste time to bring it alive. So all those transitions are the big milestones for us, and that's usually where the project dies. And if we talk about games that we are we have proposition to publish them. Usually, we expect a prototype, and that's the stage. From the prototype, you can tell because graphics, all those the assets, they can always come later. You can always make better models, compose better music. But from the even very simple prototype that are squares, chasing dots on the playing field of whatever, you can see the idea is there. And if it's not there, then we're not interested.
So we're just a publisher, not a developer, so we're not having to look at secret projects in this regard and get rid of our babies. But I guess what we do is similar to what you're saying with the Andrew Carrolls. We're looking at prototypes and stuff and measuring not just if we think the game is great, but if we would actually be a good partner for it. There have been plenty of games that we've seen that we're like, dude, this is going to go on to be fantastic, but I don't think it's going to be fantastic with us. We won't be the right people to bring this to the segment of the audience that they need to reach or whatever. There are certain genres that we just, we're not specialized in, and as a publisher, you have to admit that to yourself. And we would be doing a disservice if we took on this game, whereas another company, we might even refer you to oh, my friends over at this other place, and they would probably be better for you than I would. So we're doing a lot of that all the time. As a PR guy by trade, also taking a look at do we think we could get people interested in this, right? At a first glance or whatnot, do we think that if we take it to a show that the press will show up, right? So there is a little bit of that as well, but I think for us, it's largely based on if we think that we could actually be the right team to be handling your babies. That's where we come from.
Yeah, no, it's very similar for us as well. We do have some fancy pants financial calculation stuff that we do, which helps.
Black magic.
We have black magic. Yeah, it's a huge sheet. To be really brutally honest, that's the stuff we do to make certain people feel comfortable, especially investors, to make them feel comfortable because they see that we did our due diligence. I'll be brutally honest, the reality is that most of the time in any entertainment, you're flipping your coin, right? You never know, what's going to be huge and what isn't. That's the truth. The scary truth, but it's the truth. So for us, what it usually comes down to is just how passionate are you about this? So the way we do it in our team is if there's something that some of us have a little bit of doubt on, how can we make this successful or the right partner, is we basically just sit as a team and we go, who's going to raise their hand? Who's going to say, I'm going to invest 2 years of my life into this? But I believe in this, and I'm going to do everything I can to make this successful. And I'm going to not spend time with my family, I'm not going to spend time with my friends, I'm going to miss out on weekends because I believe that this is something that deserves to be made, and I want to be involved, right? And you'd be surprised, that question is a gut check question, right? Because it's not just your name is attached to something, it's literally your personal life. And a lot of games don't pass that test. because when your push comes to shove, people go, I'm good. But the ones that do are the ones that really, at least to us, matter, right? Because we know that we're not gonna lose interest halfway, and the team's not gonna lose, the developing team's not gonna lose interest halfway, and whatever happens, we're gonna make the best game we can, and we're gonna bring it to market the best way we can. And what happens from there, you know, you don't always control a lot of that. But yeah, that's how we look at ROI. It's more on a very human level of how much do you as a human being, what's the ROI in your personal life? And most of the time, thankfully, that pays off and it sells well and everybody makes money and everybody can afford to buy a house and whatever. But you walk away having a great experience, a very great human experience.
David, you mentioned in the Nara experience that the team was very open to suggestions and they received the feedback and did adjustments. I'd like to get on board with that and ask you how close marketing and development or game design should be in order to adjust the project or to make decisions in the project. On your experience, on all of you guys' experience, does marketing have a say in what's going to happen in the game, like a mechanic or the size of the game or whatever feature, or not? How does that work, marketing versus development?
That is a dangerous question. No, it's a good question though. It's a really good question. So I will only speak for ourselves, but marketing, zero say. Like, we are not the kind of company to be imposing like our, marketing design philosophies onto a team and their vision. If you're like a marketer who cares about like user acquisition, right? Of course you're gonna be like, oh, give me all the microtransactions, I want all that stuff, right? We're gonna make it free to play. It's gonna be phenomenal. No, it's not. It's gonna suck. If your game wasn't designed that way, then you shouldn't be changing it that way. I think any company that's asking you to change, like for marketing purposes, is maybe not the best fit for you or something. But again, that's the way we operate. Like, yeah. So if a team wants feedback on something, like anyone in our company can give it to them if they're open to it. It's totally cool. They don't have to take it. Our producers, maybe that's a little bit different. They have experience actually making games and helping with design and stuff like that, and so they might make suggestions to a team that a team could take or not take. But it's ultimately up to the team itself. We really do not want to meddle with that. It's not at our core. It's not part of our DNA.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a very interesting, dangerous question. It's also an interesting one for me because I was also a producer in games for years. So I produced a few games, which I was also doing the marketing for. So in that situation, I literally had no one to fight with besides myself. Like the two halves of the producer and the guy who has to sell it don't always get along. I drink a lot, it helps. But so no, like marketing should have zero say in the game design itself, like, for sure, 100%. And if they do, that's how you end up with a lot of bald white dudes with muscles who happen to be the Space Marines. But no, so you shouldn't be involved in that sense. The one area in which I do think there's a little bit of overlap when it comes to game design and marketing are things like Twitch integration and Twitch support, because those are gameplay features, but the reality is they're also marketing features, right? Because that's what you're going to be using to market your game to a whole other section of the gaming sphere. And it is game design. Like, you need to sit down and design that stuff. And then we do have a little bit more play with that. That being said, we'll never enforce it. I'm never going to be like, you have to have Twitch integration or else. It just needs to make sense, and we'll work on that together. But that's the only element.
I did think of one element where it's not so much swaying the design itself, but for Sable, the trailer that was revealed at E3 last year, there was talk months and months and months in advance between our trailer producer and that dev team. He was like, hey, I could make a good trailer or I could make a great trailer if you're able to implement some tools in there for like camera panning and stuff like that. And so in this regard, like, yeah, sure, it doesn't affect the development of the game itself other than time, which, I mean, that's important, but, a couple weeks and that trailer looked amazing. So that was one instance actually where I could think of where there was a little bit of not a say, but kind of like a suggestion for just some in-game under the hood tools in the engine.
Yeah, so it took us 25 minutes to get here, but finally we can disagree on something. Because one thing I always say is that actually these days marketing is a part of the development team, and you should be aware of that. That the games that are being developed without thinking about marketing, and the marketing that's being developed, without knowing what the game is all about, it's always a failure in the end. Because in the end, both teams sit in the one room, and they have the idea for this campaign, but that's not the game. But that's not the game we produced. And the other guys, hey, but you're talking about some different titles. So the thing is, in our case, we obviously you don't want to have anything like people telling you, okay, Justin Bieber is hot right now, we have to put Justin Bieber there, right? No, but in the end, marketing are the people that are traveling. They're the people that are showing the game to other people. They know directions. And actually, marketing people have a lot of knowledge about how people react to different things in the games. And that's the knowledge that you can only gain by traveling and talking with people and seeing, being at expos. And that's the additional knowledge you bring to the dev team. Because I won't be arguing about the way the combat is being developed, because I know shit about the combat. I'm not the developer for combat, or I can't tell you anything about how the level should be designed, because I'm not a level designer. But I can tell you that if in the very first second of the demo you're bringing to E3, you're chopping off head of a baby, that might be a problem, for some jobs, etc. So there's certain knowledge we have, and it's obviously you can't change the game, because the way we do it always the game is always the people that develop the game own the game. But as a marketing, you can give some additional hints about how the people may see the game during certain occasions, and that's important. We for Frostpunk, for example, and it used to be a very different game, like before it was even have a different name. But when we played the first demo, the game was called like Industrial, like years ago. Actually, marketing was one of the partners that okay, so that would be a problem with this game, because it doesn't stand out in any way. It's another RTS like many other out there, and that's the insight that we can like bring to the team. And so I wouldn't say you shouldn't. You shouldn't change the game, the core of the game, to the marketing stuff, because no free-to-play introduction, no bullshit, no super Keanu Reeves whatever stuff, cool, because it's like if you put a Keanu, if you put imagine any other actor, right? But if you take the actor, and you tell okay, so let's scrap out the character, because we have a super cool actor here, like the what's cool actor like these days?
Keanu Reeves.
But that was a very smart move. But okay, so I don't know, let's say Justin Bieber. So someone says, hey, we have to have Justin Bieber because he's hot, and so we shouldn't do that. But then again, marketing can give you a lot of insight that can actually improve your game. So in my opinion, it's wise sometimes to discuss with marketing stuff.
That's a fair point. I kind of maybe briefly touched on it, but feedback is really important. I think the team should be getting that, and then they can base the decisions on whether they want to swing development in a different way or not. I just think that it shouldn't be like forced. I think that was and I don't think you're saying that either.
Yeah, no. We had like one experiment. We, as a publisher, were influenced far deeper than everyone should be in development, and it doesn't work. If the team that brings the game, because if you do that, if you start being involved in more and more levels, actually the team loses interest in the game because it's not their game anymore, and it's hard to even finish the game. So now, from experience, you can't develop the game instead of a team because it's their game, but you can give a lot of valuable insight.
Am I the only person that thinks that 11-bit is secretly working on a Justin Bieber game? Because that came out too naturally too many times.
I can show you.
Frostpunk DLC.
I can show you my Spotify playlist if you want. It's okay.
All right, guys. So moving on to a different subject here. When you have a game, it's already signed, or you're developing it. It's a full commitment. One of the great challenges is how to get the word out correctly about that game. So if you go too early, maybe the graphics are not that good, or the game is not so well shaped yet. If you go too late, maybe there's not enough time or a good window. How do you guys plan the schedule of getting the word out on the game you're gonna release? Like, how soon should you announce the game, or is it different for every game? I'd like you guys to pitch in on that.
More dark magic. So yeah, that's a really good question. I think the sweet spot is probably somewhere within a year of a game coming out, but I mean, gosh, it depends on so many variables. I'll give an example. So we recently announced a game at the PC Gaming Show called Palestra, and it's like a really cool strategy game. And we had the opportunity to have it at the PC Gaming Show stage. The game will probably come out a little more than a year from now, which is just a bit outside my own personal window for this sort of thing. But because we had such a good opportunity for it, to get it, you know, in the eyes of hundreds of thousands of people all over the world, we went ahead and went forward with it. And now what we'll probably do is stay quiet for a little bit, like a black period, like a dark period, and then we'll reemerge, you know, like half a year before the release or something like that, and then like fully enact like a robust marketing campaign or something. But yeah, it also depends on how much content the game has to show. So like maybe like in a narrative game, like a really hardcore story-driven game, you don't want to give everything away too far in advance. You really have to space out the content. So there's probably plenty of times where it's like, I have a trailer, and then like 9 months later, all right, here's a second trailer, and you did not that much in between, maybe a couple demos or something. So it also depends a lot on the content. You don't want to give everything out too quick, or else you'll have nothing to show at the end. And leading up to the end is probably the most important bit, right? Going into launch and pre-orders and all that stuff.
So I would say from my perspective, looking at the current condition of the market, is like 6 to 9 months before the release should be like a proper time to announce. And the reason for that is like there are many games, and actually it's hard to catch attention. You actually have to have some. If you're not Rockstar, if you're a Rockstar, you can say Grand Theft Auto 6 with Justin Bieber, and like for 5 years everyone is excited. But but that's if you're a Rockstar, but if you're like us, we're a smaller company, you have to fight for the attention, and to have something to fight with, you need some bullets, right? And the bullets are the game. So if you announce too early, probably the game looks shitty, because they always do at this stage, and you're not even capable of making a proper trailer or a screenshot. And the other thing is that with 6 to 9 months, it's good that you should be able, more or less, to have some idea for the premiere, because we announce game. I've been working in the industry for like 30 years, and not a single game I've worked on ever made it on time. Like every single game I've worked on, like The Witcher, This War of Mine, for like all of the games were delayed, and hopefully not because of me. But the thing is, games always get delayed, because you're in like 18 to 24 months, you're never able to, make some proper estimation how long some things are gonna take. So how long could be the certification? How long it will take, to finish the level, whatever. Maybe there was some opportunity to take into consideration. So the less time you have, the better for you, because actually the date, even if you slip, then you move from like 9 months to 1 year, which is still okay. But if you like announce the game, I mean that's the thing with the Children of Morta, for example. Like we announced the game like in 2017, I think, on that Gamescom, which was like almost 2 years ago. The game is still not out, but it will be this summer. And the thing is like, no, so we've made some trailers, we've made stuff, and we run exactly the same problem. David said that, okay, so we've made some trailers, but we never thought that we need to expand the campaign for next year, so what are we gonna show? So actually from my perspective, like 6 to 9 months, okay, because now you need to know what you're gonna show, you need how you're gonna keep the interest, and you always have to have some plan B, because when the things will go down south, because they always do.
Yeah, like I think we need a whole panel just to answer this question, to be honest. Like it's a huge question. And I think the answer is basically what they've said. The answer is it depends, which is a shitty answer, but that's the answer. It really depends. I think there's 2 things we're talking about here. You have the marketing element of it, you have the development element of it. And those are 2 very different things, right? So from a purely marketing development point of view, the answer is it depends. So are you making a game in which it's more important to build a community than it is to get press? Because that is a real thing. Like, are you working on a transfer simulation game, right? Like, the reality is that most press outside of Germany and Russia are not going to care. Like, City Skylines, everybody loves City Skylines when it became City Skylines. Like, when it was a huge success. When City Skylines came out, it was super quiet around it because it's just not a genre that most press care about, right? So in that situation, I think it makes sense to just announce it and start building a community. Get feedback. Because the last thing you want to do is get feedback when your game launches. Because at that point, you're in trouble. Like that genre, you're dead. Like if people come out and say, we hate this mechanics, it's unbalanced, UI sucks, I can't understand what I'm doing, you're dead in the water, regardless of how good your marketing team is. Right, so for that genre, I suggest go early and just start building your community and never mind the press. And don't worry about press beats, worry about the community, because they're going to carry you through the whole process. Now, if you're working in a really cool narrative game with a really important story, something like Red Artistic Wine or a few other games, in that sense, as a marketer, I would say don't go too early because you're going to run out of things to talk about because it's the story, right? You can't give too much of it away. It's a shorter experience. It's a 2-hour experience. So it's really hard to talk about a 2-hour experience for a year. So then go later, hit hard, have a really good marketing plan built in. But that's all the marketing side of it. Then there's the development side of it. And the development side of it, I think, is a really interesting one. So most of the time what I think developers do, in my humble opinion, incorrectly, is that they work in a vacuum. So you work and you're so focused on what it is you're doing that you forget to show people the game. The reason you forget to show people the game is because it's your baby and it's terrifying. What if they don't like it? What if they're mean? And what if you're wrong? And then what happens is you work on that for a year. Hardcore, you're giving all your personal life all this time, and then you finally get to a point where you show people it, and that's when you start to realize the problems with it. And the reality is you couldn't realize the problems with it 6 months before that, right? And that doesn't mean you have to show it publicly in a huge event and spend a lot of money, but that just means show people your game. Like, don't be scared. Like, show them, get feedback. Most of the time, honestly, that feedback is some of the best insight you're ever going to get. And it's always better to get that insight 6 months and not 2 years. Because you're still going to have to address a lot of those issues most of the time, and then you're just prolonging the inevitable. So, again, development, marketing. Marketing depends, not always good to go early, but development, please show it to your friends, show it to your family, show it to other gamers in your life. Hear what they have to say. Like, maybe they're going to tell you that it's just not fun. Maybe they're going to tell you that the UI sucks. And most of the time, the UI sucks. But it's good to know now, right? Like, so start early.
One thing about showing the game to your friends and family is that people sometimes rely too much on this, and you can get some false image because you show the game that you've been working for the last 6 months in your mom's basement, and you show it to your mom or your father, whatever, and obviously they're not gonna say what the fuck is that. They say, I'm proud of you, son. I mean, that's the best game I've ever played, and whatever. And you go to your friends, and your friends are developers, and you try to support each other. So each one of you says to all the other people, you've made a great game, and now look at mine. And the other guy says, yours is good as well, man. And suddenly, like, everyone's a fucking genius, like everyone's making good games, and you start to live in that bubble that everyone tells you that your game is amazing. And then you publish the game, or you go to journalists, but usually you publish the game, and then the reality strikes. No one cares about your game. And you're surprised because like everyone told you it's amazing. So you have to be very careful about it, because it's good to get some proper like boost for your motivation, but you can't lose yourself in this, because you can easily everyone will tell you that your game is great, you won't do anything about it, and then you just fail, and you'll be like get some depression, whatever, because you won't understand why it happened. And that's the reason, because the closest relatives to you, ask them about the honest opinion, not the thing that they want to tell you because they want you to make you feel good.
Yeah, basically get some critics in your circle. That's huge. Yeah, get some mean friends.
Vernon, you mentioned like the magic word community, which is something that's very important in game development. We have lots of indie developers here. I think it would be a cool thing for us to share, for you guys to share. What are your strategies on building a community? Like, I'm starting a new game, no one knows the game, like I don't have a fan base. What would be the tips or hints you could give the audience to start a community?
So that's another really good question, and that's another question that we would literally need another panel for. To be honest, like there's so many variables involved. Again, it's such a shitty answer. It depends. I'm so sorry. Like there is no so. It's a challenging question because most of the time I think people want a clear answer. Like you want what I call the magic bullet. It's like, what's the magic bullet? What's the bullet I can use that I will never miss? Regardless of what I'm working on, there is no magic bullet. And I'm in a luxury position because I get to work on multiple games at the same time. I release multiple games a year. So I get to learn from what I did wrong 2 months before, right? Most people don't have that luxury. You guys have like one game that you're working on, right? So how to build a community, it depends on what game it is that you're making. Are you making, again, are you making a simulation game in which creating additional content is really easy because it's user-created content, right? So people can build their own worlds and they just use the tools that you give them. In that sense, you have so much content that you can continuously share. In that sense, start early because then you're not going to be starving for content. And then for those type of games, I think things like Discord are super important. You can build your games around them in Discord. You can use Steam's forums to build up your wish list numbers. Those are all really important tools that you can use. You can use Zola. I think has really cool tool sets, and they're here somewhere, that can really allow you to build your community. Again, and then you have other types of games, be it like narrative games or some of the action games in which that just won't work as much because you have lack of content and you have lack of things you can talk about. And sometimes, we also work on licensed games. The reality is that, I can't show people Jogos a year before we're going to be talking about it because I'm going to have someone shoot me from behind the head when I'm sleeping, right? So that's another limitation that I have that you just need to, it is what it is, right? And in those circumstances, you need to know what is it that you're working with. Like, are you working with a game that does not have a lot of content, and the content that you generate is going to have to come from you? In that sense, building community is really difficult because community wants engagement. And you can't give them continuous engagement and you have nothing to show them. It's like really hard to come back and remember the screenshot I showed you? It is 5% better. Please wish list. It's really hard to do that. So in those cases, I think having a more disciplined marketing campaign that you have planned out beats and that you can drive people to, and also user acquisition is a dirty word, but user acquisition just means getting to someone, right? So that you can build in those beats and drive those people on those beats to your community via Discord and Steam. That works pretty well, but that also comes back down to your content. How good is your content that you're using to pay for ads to drive that? So yeah, depends on your strategy, depends on the game, but usually almost always it comes down to your content to build community.
I'm going to give a really general piece of advice because that's a tough question to answer in a couple minutes. Kind of building off what Vernon said real quick, anything that you're doing to promote your game, whether it's on Twitter or you start a Discord or whatever, when you have a major beat, make sure that you attach a call to action, right, to wishlist. That's really important. The more wish lists you get, the better the Steam algorithm is going to treat you when it comes time to feature your game in a carousel or something. But make sure you always have something, like an activity that goes alongside whatever it is that you are talking about at that moment, whether it's a new GIF, a screenshot, an interview, whatever. But the other piece of very general advice I was going to give is something that marketers deal with all the time, and it's that you get sick of your own message before anybody else does. I could say the same thing about the same game 10 times, and I'm so tired of it already, and maybe the person I'm trying to reach has only heard it the last time I said it. So don't get tired of constantly going out there to similar audiences and talking about yourself, your team, your game, whatever. You will get way sick of hearing your own voice before anyone hears it for the first time. So always keep that in mind when you're out there sharing your stuff.
Yeah, I'll be just quick here, but for us, when it comes to community, Steam is the main tool, and basically that will be the same case for you if you're working a PC game. The Epic Store doesn't have any community thing, whatever, so most people gather on Steam. We use some social media, obviously, but when we don't have any boards for discussion, whatever, because all those things happen on Steam. And there's one very important thing about user acquisition and the wishes, because I won't give you the number, but you have to do some homework here. But actually, there are certain values of the conversion for the wish list and the size of the community of your group. So actually, the thing, and we learned it quite late, but actually, that's one of the things about how you can estimate the success of the game, is that because you can count the number of your wish list and the number before the release and the size of your community group on Steam, and you do some math, and actually you can get pretty accurate estimations how much you're gonna sell in the first week, first month, and actually that works. Depending on the game, there are a few percent more or less, but actually you can get the idea. So the more people you attract there, in the end it will result in a better sales. So you should do everything you can, and that's what we do right now. Actually, with Children of Morta, all the campaigns we do are added to the wish list because we know that at day one that will convert into sales. So be sure to gather your community there and make it as big as possible because it will bring you more money in the end.
Nice. I think we have time for one question from the audience. Over there.
Bom dia a todos, me chamo Danilo e eu não sei falar inglês, eu gostaria de saber da possibilidade do moderador traduzir a minha questão.
Pode deixar.
Certo. A minha pergunta ela é relacionada a sigilo, digamos assim. Suponhamos que eu, como um produtor e a minha equipe, a gente quer mostrar nosso jogo para publish e aí tá só entre, o jogo tá só entre a gente. E aí a gente apresenta esse jogo para publish e ela simplesmente fala, não gostamos. Ok. Aí passa um mês, 2 meses e sai um jogo exatamente igual ao nosso e aí, tipo, estranho isso. Eu gostaria de saber se existe algo relacionado a um tipo de contrato de sigilo, se é um tiro no escuro, como funciona esse processo.
Right. Danilo, né?
Yes.
His name is Danilo. He's asking about confidentiality. So when you're showing a game to a publisher and maybe you sign an NDA or not, he's mentioning a case where you maybe a developer shows a game, the publisher says no, and a while after that, the very same game comes out. So what do you guys? How do you guys treat confidentiality or secrecy on ideas and projects? What's your take on that?
So basically, we do sign NDAs if someone wants to, but when we go to shows like this, there's no time for saying NDAs. So I mean, it's all about not being a dick. Like that's a general rule in life, just don't be a dick. And so we don't sign all the time. And from my personal experience, I haven't seen a history like this happening. Someone stole the idea. Because you can always prove someone that you had the idea in mind, that you have a design doc from 2 years ago, and you can prove that you were the first one to invent it. Obviously, there's some legal rights, etc. But I haven't heard of a story like this in the gaming industry, so I think you shouldn't be afraid about that.
Yeah, I don't think I've heard of one instance of that. But just to talk about it, I guess, take confidentiality very important. Like privacy is a huge concern, and we don't want to breach anyone's trust. But with that said, like if you pitch a game and then 2 years later someone pitches the same game and it's better, sorry.
Yeah, no, I've never heard of anybody doing that. You might be talking to some assholes. Like, if that happened to you, Jesus Christ. That's weird. It's the same thing for us. We take it very seriously. Honestly, at the end of the day, the reality is that our industry is huge in terms of money, but small in terms of people. So the reputation is all you have, right? So if you're good at what you do, you protect your reputation more than anything. So you never, even if you don't sign something, you're never going to turn on someone. We go the extra mile. So if I know of a game that's similar to yours that maybe we already signed, I'm not going to show it to you, but that'd be kind of shitty for me not to tell you. Of like, hey man, that's something similar they're working on, right? It's good to keep confidentiality. That's a hard word. It's good to keep secrecy. There you go. Move the word in mind, but yeah, talk to people that if you're so worried about that, you're talking to the wrong people, man. Like that's shady.
So guys, we're out of time now. Thank you so much for sharing your experience.